Hey guys, and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video I will try my best to summarize the full Roblox Piggy storyline, so without further ado let's get straight into the video. Sometime before the birth of the infection, Willow, William and their parents are living in a rundown room in the depths of the alleys. Being homeless, they had a lack of any income, resorting to Willow's parents having to steal for their children Willow and William. Eventually, Willow's parents get caught stealing and are put in jail, leaving a young Willow and William confused and sad standing there in disbelief. Daisy, working in Daisy's TV's, a store in the alleys, notices Willow and William's lack of a parent figure and in dear sympathy for the stranded wolves, she decides to look after them as a parent figure. Things were going smoothly until one day, out of the thin air, Daisy leaves an abrupt note in Willow and William's room stating that she has been drafted for the military. And just like that, Daisy is gone. Daisy's departure leaves William in sadness, not knowing any better. William decides to leave Willow to go after Daisy. Without Willow knowing of William's departure, Billy, Willow's companion, comes up with an idea to steal something for William to cheer him up. Willow immediately agrees, although Pony, another one of Willow's companions, is hesitant of the idea. Despite this, Willow, Pony, Rash and Billy go on a mission, venturing through the alleys whilst being chased by the police to collect a pie for William, being guarded by the one and only Officer Polly. Eventually, Willow gets the pie for William with joy and excitement, although her mood completely changes after noticing William's absence with his scarf lying there, leaving Willow in a sad and angered state. Cut to most likely several months later, Officer Doggy and the player are on a mission to find the three most wanted criminals in Elljamc. The player's detective skills led to the three most wanted criminals most likely being located in the wastelands of the alleys. Willow, Rash and the gang are still up to no good to stay alive. After being chased through the alleys by Rash, the player and Officer Doggy locate Willow's hideout after overcoming certain obstacles along the way. The player and Doggy eventually locate Willow inside her hideout and put a stop to her criminal reign. Willow and Rash are arrested, although Pony and Billy are yet to be seen. They most likely split ways after what happened to William. Also at this time, Mr. P, a successful billionaire, owning the Lucella Carnival, donates over 40% of his bank funds to research facilities in an attempt to cure his sickened wife with the so-called lineoma disease. Mr. P, in a panicked state, rushes the doctors to test for the supposed cure for his wife's sickness. Although the doctors stated the sample of the cure was unstable and that it needed further development, Mr. P ignores this and looks immediately for volunteers. The Piggy family, willing to help the cause, volunteer to test the cure, all of them but Georgie. The initial results were amazing, drastically making the Piggy family stronger. So, in a hurry, Mr. P immediately gives the sample to his wife. But after a day or two, the Piggy family start to show effects of severe hostility towards others, and so does Mrs. P, his wife. The last time Mr. P seen her, she had glowing red eyes, but Mr. P did not have the heart and courage to put her down, so he lets her go. Cut to the Piggy residence. The rain is blitzering down when Georgie is abruptly woken up by a nightmare when he discovers that Penny is gone. After escaping his house and battling his nightmarish enemies, he sees Penny walk away into the darkness, which is very mysterious indeed. This is the nightmare that keeps playing over and over again in Georgie's head after discovering the hostile state of his family. What actually happens when his parents and sister return home is that Georgie discovers the weird state of his parents and sister, who immediately start acting hostile towards him. In a panic, Georgie runs away from home looking for his grandma in the city. After Georgie's disappearance, the player is set out to investigate what happened in the Piggy residence. The player makes it to the Piggy residence, where an unknown, infected, knocks the player out, where they then wake up in Georgie and Penny's room, which is very strange considering that the infected aren't capable of this. After escaping the Piggy residence, the player questions what they have just seen and rushes back to the station to inform the other officers. When the player gets back to the station, they are told by the station's broadcasting speaker that a monster has infested the building and telling survivors to make their way to the garage. The player gets chased by the infected mother pig throughout the map, having to obtain gas for the getaway car in the garage. We get revealed in this chapter that Willow and all other prisoners have managed to escape the prison and Polly is nowhere to be seen. When the player unlocks the garage entry, it is revealed that Doggy is the mysterious broadcaster who came in on his day off. Although the question to be raised is, where did all the officers go and where is Willow? The player and Doggy then flee the scene, and with limited gas the player and Doggy are suddenly surrounded by heaps of infected at the Lucella gallery. Back with Willow, in attempt to put her dark past behind her, lights her old living space on fire where William and Willow slept for many years. When leaving her old home, Willow discovers a scared tiger shivering beside a fire. The so-called name of this tiger is Tigry. Tigry was a troubled child who had neglectful parents. They would often disown him. He was bullied in the past and now takes on a quiet yet observant role later in the Piggy storyline. Willow offers Tigry to come with her, and just like that the two are off on a journey to recruit further survivors. Willow then finds her old partner in crime, Pony, who is lying in a field gazing at a photo of his soulmate, Zizzy. Willow, Pony and Tigry then recruit more survivors, forming the gang TSP, a gang that's get hinted through the early stages of the storyline. The new members of the group consist of Pandy, Katie, a nurse, Baron, Philip, Kitty, who works as a chef in the mall, Foxy and Felix, a former magician.
This newly formed group raid the Lucella hospital, and obtain the substance that supposedly caused the infection.
Back to the gallery, the player and Doggy decide to go in to escape through a back exit that leads into an alleyway. Yet again the player and Doggy are being chased by a member of the Piggy family, Father Pig. Anyways, after escaping, they set off to find a place to stay until the infection blows over, and the forest is the place they end up going.
Back with the player and Doggy, they have been camping in a forest for several weeks, silently visiting small towns in seek of supplies. They chat about what they want to do after the infection in attempt to distract their minds from the current situation. Then one night, whilst the player and Doggy are asleep, Willow forces Pony to infect Doggy and the player with the substance retrieved from the hospital in seek of revenge. The player, surprisingly unaffected by the substance, wakes up to see an empty potion bottle and Doggy wandering the forest. But he's changed. Doggy has been infected by the substance due to Pony's influenced actions. After committing this evil, inhumane act, Pony actions repeatedly haunt him, filling him with deep regret and sorrow for what he has done. Realizing the inhumanity within the group, Pony leaves to go find his long-lasting crush and soulmate Zizzy. Pony eventually finds Zizzy, who is hiding with her younger sisters, Z and Zizzy, in an abandoned hotel in the city. Back to the player, after escaping the forest they come across a walkie-talkie asking if anyone is out there. After the player responds in hope to find any safe survivors, this mysterious person on the walkie-talkie tells the player to go save their friend who is trapped in a school after going on a supply run. The player then makes their way into the school, being chased down by an infected teacher. There is a mysterious code in this school stating that they have no control over their body and actions once infected. After freeing the trapped survivor, whose name is Bunny, they escape to the sewers, where they are met by Mr. P, who was the mysterious person on the walkie-talkie. All of a sudden the player starts to burn up and ends up passing out. The player then hallucinates Doggy whilst being pulled into the hospital. The player then wakes up in the hospital with Bunny by their side. She explains that she is surprised that the player woke up and that there were minimal signs of infection. Does this mean the player is immune to the infection, because surely the player would have become infected by now? Also, Bunny explains that the player woke up at the perfect time as the hospital was being evacuated due to one of the doctors becoming infected. Mr. P had told Bunny to meet on the rooftop when evacuating, so the player and Bunny make their way up to the rooftop whilst being chased by an infected doctor. Although, the selfish Mr. P had already left with his research team, Bunny and the player then make their way down to the underground metro to escape the hospital facility. After fixing the underground metro to escape, Bunny, who had initially not been feeling great, states that she was infected and that she was one of the test subjects for Mr. P's cure. Bunny stays behind in the metro to not put the player in any sort of danger. The player then says their goodbyes and leaves to get revenge for the damage Mr. P has caused. The player stops the tram at Mr. P's carnival to look for any signs of his current whereabouts. The player comes across an infected fox trapped in a cage, who was trapped in there by TSP. This happens to be Foxy, but it is unknown why he deserved to be infected and put in a cage. Upon escaping the carnival, the player finds some survivors. Zizzy, who is a cunning, skilled fencer, and Pony, a clumsy yet comforting ally. Pony mistakes the player for an infected, as he had infected the player at the forest. This news is revealed to the player later in the story, but for now Pony and the player are good friends. They allow the player to join the safe place crew and the three of them start their journey back to the safe place. Zizzy, Pony and the player come across the safe place but they need to unlock the gate first before entering. The player comes across an infected grandma pig and an infected elephant who hunt them down throughout the apartments. After opening the gate, Pony and Zizzy properly introduce themselves. Pony studied optometry like his father and wanted to be an optician. Zizzy is a fencer who taught her two twin sisters to fight. As they speak to one another, a mysterious shadow figure is seen peeking behind the dumpster. Seeing this as a threat, the player and Zizzy then chase after the figure whilst Pony stays behind. Zizzy and the player follow the figure to the mall. The player and Zizzy then find the figure's hideout in the mall after being chased by an aggressive mall droid designed to attack any visitors. When finding the hideout, the figure slowly comes out of his hiding place. It was Georgie. He had deep fear in his eyes. The player's investigation has come to an end finding Georgie. Zizzy and the player bring him back to the safe place. This is where then the player meets the crew. The player meets Zizzy's sisters, Mimi and Giraffe. Mimi is a smart engineer who knew her way around technology and Giraffe is a tough guy with a strong passion for nature and ecology. Although the meeting was short-lasted as Mimi had managed to find a working helicopter signal at a nearby military outpost. The player, Zizzy and Pony then make their way to the outpost. The outpost fell under attack of the outbreak and was filled with infected soldiers. Zizzy, Pony and the player then eventually open the doors to the power plant, where Mr. P presumably is as an empty helicopter can be seen in the outpost. Upon opening the doors, Georgie shows up in seek of revenge for his family. Georgie and the player enter the plant whilst Pony and Zizzy stay outside to fend off infected soldiers. Upon entering, the player and Georgie come across a distraught Mr. P not being able to face reality. Mr. P perceives the player and Georgie to be figments of his imagination and runs off into the distance. Mr. P's thoughts get wilder as he starts to attack the player. He was in a world of his own. One of the researchers for Mr. P is infected, also chasing the player around the map. The player searches for something to snap Mr. P back to reality. The player finds a photo of Miss P bringing him to terms with his own actions. He then explains his story, spiking real hatred from Georgie towards Mr. P, but the player stops Georgie from attacking him. The player and Georgie leave Mr. P behind in the plant to go meet Zizzy and Pony. Zizzy and Pony manage to defeat the soldiers, making the player feel relieved. Unsure of where to go from here, Georgie's face lights up with the idea of finding a cure. In the credits, Mr. P and the infected are nowhere to be seen, so where did they go? Don't worry, this will be answered later in the story. Fast forward a few months and we are back at the safe place with the crew. Mimi wants to get batteries for an old radio they found on one of their old supply runs, so the player, Zizzy and Pony go to the local store in search for batteries. The store was half empty of supplies, but the player manages to find the batteries and the crew make their way back to the safe place. After getting the radio powered back on, a strange voice tells them to meet their group at the Old Oak, although Pony is very reluctant to go due to past experience with other groups. Despite this, Pony, the player and Zizzy go to meet this group. Pony was right, as it turned out to be an ambush from Pony's former group TSP. Willow, remaining the leader of the group, interrogates the player, Pony and Zizzy. She ends up taking Zizzy back to their outpost and Pony and the player chase after her. Pony and the player come across the refinery where Zizzy is being held. Although Pony doesn't recognize this settlement, meaning that TSP has multiple settlements. In the refinery, the player and Pony avoid the guards and unlock the holding cell Zizzy is in. There is a note in this chapter explaining that Foxy was relocated, but we find him infected in a cage, meaning that Willow has become evil and cold after past events. We also find out that Tigray was the mock of the TSP group, which helps us understand why he is chasing us. It is clear that he is trying to make an impression in front of TSP. In the end, the player and Pony discover Zizzy still alive but with a scratch on her arm by Officer Polly, who Willow most likely brought back to the refinery. Pony and the player say their goodbyes to Zizzy and leave the refinery whilst Zizzy creates a distraction. Zizzy sabotages the facility by blowing the whole refinery up. Zizzy has to fight off her infection and battle her memories, and when she tries to leave she gets teleported to a dark dimension where she is confronted by a shadow creature who we will call IT. It explains that this being was once human and things descalated, and when its time ended on Earth, its time in this dimension began. The being was the one creating hallucinations for Zizzy throughout the refinery, and after it encourages Zizzy to join it by using Pony as a hallucination, she gives in and a mysterious arm pulls her into somewhere. This same thing happens when other people get infected, explaining how some infected suddenly disappear and teleport to different places and how some of the infected have its eye, suggesting that it can control infected. We will see infected being controlled by it later in the story. Pony and the player return back to the safe place, and the absence of Zizzy is revealed to her sisters and the rest of the crew. Most likely several days later, Georgie worryingly wakes up the player to the sound of explosions outside the safe place. The player and Georgie get everyone down to the ground floor to escape the under-attack safe place. Although Z and Zizzy are nowhere to be seen as they escaped through a vent shaft. As the crew came out of the safe place, they were met by the Silver Paw, who had shot a rocket into the building. Willow said that due to Zizzy actions at the safe place, many people had to be relocated elsewhere. The group are taken away and put in a makeshift cell in a factory, which is presumably one of the Silver Paw's outposts. The player figures out that Willow taking Zizzy was all staged and that she took Zizzy because Willow knew that Pony and the player would follow the group. Then after leaving, the Silver Paw followed them back to the safe place. The group had fell right into Willow's hands. After spending a whole day in a rotting cell, the group were found by Z and Zizzy, who had managed to sneak into the factory's sewage system. Looks like Zizzy taught them well after all. The player and the twins go back down into the sewers to find a way out to open the cell from the outside. When going through the sewers, the player is tormented by the same being that tormented Zizzy, it. The player gets chased by an infected crocodile throughout the map, who is under the influence of it as it has orange eyes. But despite this, the player and the twins get the security key for the cell door. As the crew were escaping, Tigray has the opportunity to put them down but decides not to out of sympathy. Willow then pushes past Tigray, and in revenge for William, she shoots at Pony, but Giraffe heroically dives in front of Pony and takes a bullet for him. The rest of the group flee the scene, including Giraffe, whilst Pony and the player stay behind. Willow, in deep anger, gave the player and Pony a head start to a duel. She fired her weapon and broke one of the lights, making the scene pitch black. The player and Pony then save trapped TSP members and knock Willow unconscious. The player constantly hears whispers throughout the factory saying, "he," and "not responsible." Is this hinting that Mr. P is not responsible for starting the infection, and that the infection is all a part of its plan to take over the world? After Pony knocks her out, Pony and the player regroup with the rest of the group and the TSP members outside the factory. Tigray throws a dagger at Willow's gun, disarming her, where Willow then admits defeat after seeing Zizzy's sisters, filling her with deep regret after what she did to Zizzy. Willow then tells the uniting groups that she heard radio broadcasts up north for a supposed cure. The TSP group stay behind and look after Giraffe, whilst the player, Pony, Willow, Georgie, Mimi and the twins head up north. The journey up north is not going to be so easy, as Tigray is racing the group to where the cure might be held up at. When Willow takes them to the port, the tugboat is missing as Tigray got to it first. Mimi then points out that the lighthouse could help the group find a nearby ship, so the player, Pony and Willow go off to power the lighthouse. After getting the lighthouse to work, a nearby boat approaches called the Medora, which docks at the port. The group then board the boat and encounter Captain Budgie, a cautious yet entertaining sailor. The group state that they are making their way to Doveport, although Budgie says that the fuel to get them there is locked away in the bottom part of the ship with the infected crew. So therefore Willow and the player go down to get the fuel. Once Willow and the player reach the fuel container, an infected crewmate approaching from behind locks them in the container. Whilst locked inside, the player and Willow make peace with each other when then Pony and the rest of the group unlock the container for them, although Mimi states that all the infected were gone when they went down. This most likely means that it is controlling the crewmates and has teleported them elsewhere. The reunion was interrupted by the sounds of explosions. The group made their way back up to the deck and Doveport could be seen in the distance, accompanied by explosive lights. When the group get to Doveport, they discover that the tugboat is there, meaning that Tigray is one step ahead of the group. The voices continue to haunt the player throughout the player. Throughout the docks, a moose with the insolence eye chases the player and Pony having the ability to teleport. Pony and the player go through the docks and eventually unlock a passageway to the surface where the player finds Tigray at the opposite passage. Tigray offers the player to help him, but the player declines. The group then make their way to the surface where they are introduced to Kona and Robbie whilst explosives go off in the distance. The military must be trying to stop infected from reaching the outpost up north to protect the cure. Kona is the engineer responsible for the creation of the mall droid, although he wasn't too keen on adding chainsaws to their hands. Mimi and Kona had known each other for years as they went to the same school of engineering. Kona offers Mimi a radio so the group can keep in touch with Kona with the group. Kona then sends the group on their way through the temple to get back to the surface. Robbie and the player go down first into a lab where Kona had dug into an ancient temple. After getting the temple door open which leads to the surface, the group make their way up, getting away from ongoing explosions. Then all of a sudden, the world around the player goes dark and gets teleported to a dark dimension just like Zizzy. It reveals that the player is immune to the infection, which explains how they survived the attack at the Piggy residence and how they didn't turn from drinking the potion at the forest. The being attempts to get the player to join the Insolence, its army, but the player smartly declines. In the blink of an eye, the player is back with the group and Pony informs the player that it has tried to get him to join it by offering Pony to see his family again. The group then heads off in the distance where Kona radios in about an outpost ahead. As the group proceeds to enter the camp, Kona radios in telling the group to be careful of nearby infected. After Pony, player and Willow unlock the elevator which leads down to the lab, they go back to the outside of the outpost to meet the others. Pony reveals that he was the one who infected his best friend Doggy, leaving the player in total shock and disbelief. Despite the actions Pony has committed, the player forgives him. Pony states that he thought that the player was infected at the carnival because Pony gave the potion to them. When the group make their way down to the lab, they are met by Tigray setting explosive charges down. Tigray then insults Willow, causing them to have a brawl between each other. This causes the explosives to go off, separating the player from the rest of the group on one side and Tigray and Willow on the other side. The player then enters the lab, where they get chased by the infamous Penny Pig, who has been taken under control by the Insolence and seems to teleport around the map. She must have been used for some sort of science experiment to create the cure, because why else would she be in the lab? The player, after seeing Penny Pig, did not have the heart to tell Georgie the truth of his sister's gut-wrenching fate if it was real. When the player locates the cure, Willow and Tigray are already there fighting to take the cure. Although, they set aside their differences and accept one another. Abruptly, Mimi comes in telling the group to come outside the camp. A helicopter lands in front of the group and several soldiers come out stating that they received a distress call from civilians, but all of a sudden a group of infected rise from the ground and the soldiers fire their weapons, taking them down. Also, Sergeant Monroe addresses Tigray as a deserter as Tigray looks at the ground in shame. Cut back to before the infection started, Tigray had been getting bullied and shamed by his parents for many years. To get his life back together, Tigray decides to join the military. In war, Tigray and Danny, another soldier, are commanded by Sergeant Monroe to pass no man's land. Tigray falls into an abandoned military base underground and has to escape some of his memories and kill the nightmare creature that's haunting him, although this creature turns out to be Danny, who is stabbed in the chest by Tigray. Tigray then leaves the army after what he has done, which is the reason why Sergeant Monroe calls him a deserter. Cut to current time, the player is teleported back into a dark dimension with it. It reveals its name to be the Inkitos 1, so we will call it TIO. TIO, hating the idea of the group saving the world from the infection, tries to talk the player out of it, as TIO states it will lead to mass destruction. TIO, in a furious mood, transforms into some sort of monster-looking creature, and TIO teleports the whole group to their memories to try defeat them and stop them from saving the world. The player then saves the group from their individual memories, Pony battling his father, the sisters battling Zizzy, and Georgie battling Penny. The player also uses his memories to defeat TIO, such as Doggy, Bunny and Zizzy. In the end, the player defeats TIO, destroying him for eternity. The group then gets teleported back to reality. Willow comes to terms for the damage she has caused towards Tigray and apologies to him. Willow and Tigray then leave the group off into the distance, wishing them good luck with their future journeys. The military then state, "We've got a mission to complete," and the story ends there. We get an after-credits scene where we see the group with Kona, Robbie, and an uninfected Zizzy, as she has now been freed from TIO's control. The camera then pans out and we get a glimpse of the group in a black portal gate that they are stuck inside of, and it ends there. Does this mean TIO being destroyed was just an illusion and that the group are still stuck in their memories? Also, Pony mentions the price of carrots, meaning that civilization and the market are back up and running. This surely means the world has been saved, right? Hopefully this will be answered inside of Piggy Intercity or future Piggy games, but for now I will see you guys later, goodbye.
Why